Chad Hyams here, welcoming you back to the Achieve Your Apex podcast. We are on to chapter 14, building good habits. Now, good habits bring good results. Duh, right? That was pretty obvious, Chad. Yeah, I did a lot of research to come up with that one, though. So, here we're going to talk about habit creation because you've heard it from so many different people, and maybe you get something different here that finally makes a click for you. Because I will tell you, people refer to me as a creature of habit, and I take that as a compliment. Because the better your habits, the better your results. I want to talk about to make habits work for us, though, we have to understand our motivation. We have to understand the importance of what truly is driving me or driving you. And you have to take the time to figure that out because there are people who will just do things and then give up on them. And then there's people who will understand their why, and that will help them break records, smash through ceilings, whatever it is they are working towards. And you have to figure out what that motivation is. Now, I want to take a second and I want to talk about what I believe is a myth. And that's the conversation of the big why, right? That's this, what's that thing? And people talk about your legacy and people talk about what it is that drives you every single day. And sadly, for most of us, we have no idea. We have no idea. It's such an overwhelming thought that we have no idea what it's going to be. And even if we figure out what it is, we always figure we have time to get to it. Or we just use some cop-out answer and we say, well, my big why is my family. Well, what does that really mean is what I would ask people when they would say that. And their answer would be, well, right? Because they hoped nobody would ask farther. And what I want you to do is take a minute and figure out not your big why. I want you to figure out your little why. Don't worry about your legacy. Worry about your reputation right now. Because here's the beautiful thing. Little y after little y after little y equals success. And your reputation again and again and again will become that legacy you leave behind. So figure out a little why, something that only lasts for a little time. I've told my story of running a marathon on previous episodes, and as soon as I crossed that finish line, the motivation was gone. It was done. How many people go into lose weight diet mode in early spring because they want to be ready to put on that bathing suit and look good? And then as soon as the summer season is over, that motivation is gone because they're not in a bathing suit anymore and they catch up on the calories they were missing. Think about it. We just need a little why, and then we need the next little why, and then the next little why. There is two terms you may have heard. There's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Now, just think about the words, right? Internal and external, intrinsic, extrinsic. And I want you to know that studies from Stanford show that intrinsic motivation leads to much longer lasting habits compared to extrinsic. Now, that probably doesn't surprise you, right? Yet how many of us do it for the reward that's coming, for the recognition that's coming, instead of finding that intrinsic motivation buried within us that is going to allow us the opportunity to truly feel the success that's coming from what it is we're working on. I want you to keep that in mind, right? What keeps you moving forward even when it gets hard? I live in Florida right now. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you know I live in Florida now. And right now, when I'm recording this, it's cold. That's right, it's cold. Now, yes, I understand. I lived in Washington. I lived in Toronto. I know what cold is. This is cold because it's 42 degrees outside in the morning when I'm supposed to go for a run. I need to understand the intrinsic motivation for why I'm getting out of my bed, putting on my stuff in Florida at 42 degrees to go run. And it's because I know what that is. that I don't think twice about getting up and going. Keep that in mind for you. Habit actually reinforces your motivation. All right, we've heard Zig Ziglar say it, right? Motivation doesn't last, which is why you should do it often, just like bathing. Okay. Same as we're doing this habit creation, our motivation grows. The snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we feel that success. We feel that excitement, which keeps us going and moving in the right direction. Now, we've heard the research, right? The University College of London has said it takes an average of 66 days to form a habit, depending on the complexity of said habit. Some habits are really easy and you'll pick them up really quickly and you'll feel like you got 2-3 weeks into it and this is a habit for you. Some habits are going to feel like for the rest of your life, you're still working on developing that habit. Yet what I want you to remember is as you're building these habits, you need to build them one at a time. Don't attempt to build 5 habits at the same time. Don't look for some cop out and take the program like 75 Hard, which is a great program for those of you out there who need it. Yet you can't say you're creating the 75 Hard habit and all of those things. They won't stick. What'll end up happening is you'll end up doing some of them and you'll end up dropping off on the others if you're attempting to make them a habit. Keep that in mind as you're going on this, one habit at a time. Now, how do we do habits? It's called cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward. What's the cue? The sun is up. Okay. What's the routine? I jump out of bed. What's the reward? I don't know. Warm cup of coffee waiting for me because the coffee maker works like that. I don't drink coffee. I don't know. Okay. But figure out the cue that triggers the routine. You can't just create a habit if you don't have a cue to tie it to. I can't just all of a sudden say, oh, I'm going to do this unless I know what triggers that. My alarm goes off, I head for the gym. Okay. And what's the reward that comes from said routine? And it'll keep the cycle going. The reward will motivate you that the next time the cue happens to create the routine, to reach for that reward, and you'll create this powerful habit cycle in front of you. Okay. Habits are the things that keep motivation going, yet we need the motivation to keep the habit going when it gets challenging. It's that tricky game of what came first, the chicken or the egg. What we want you to remember is that habits should be tied to your values when possible, because that'll make them even more meaningful. And the more meaningful the habit you are creating is going to be, the easier it will be for you to have that motivation to make it happen. So think about some of your values for a second. Think about a small habit right now that connects to a long-term goal of yours, or a short-term goal of yours, or a value of yours. And see if you can figure out what's the cue that's going to trigger the habit and what's the reward when I make the habit happen that will continue the cycle. And before you know it, you are a creature of habit and your motivation goes right along with it. Until our next episode, folks, keep climbing.